to another series, part of the series of the state of gender equality, #GenderGaps, which is brought to you by Gender Impact Studies Center of Impact and Policy Research Institute, IMPRI, Delhi Post News, GenDev Center for Research Innovations, and CityMakers Mission International. Today we have the 7th part of the series, and we have Zakia Soman, who is speaking on patriarchy in the 21st century, challenges and the way forward amid COVID-19. On Zakia, I just want to say here that Zakia Soman believes in and strives for a just, fair, and equitable world. She is co-founder of Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, which works for Muslim women's citizenship rights and for gender justice in Islam. She's the founder of Center for Peace Studies, hosted by ActionAid, which is engaged in knowledge activism for peace and justice, religious tolerance, pluralism, and rights of minorities. She's on the India Core Committee of SAPE, that is South Asian Alliance for Poverty Eradication, that engages on issues of poverty regionally across different social Asian countries. She served on the organizing committee of People's SAC in Kathmandu in 2006 and in Colombo in 2008. She received the Outstanding Women's Achievers Award from the National Commission of Women in 2014. She was featured in BBC's 100 Fearless Women Saw Bekhof Andolankari Aurtein in November 2015. As petitioner, she won the legal case wherein the Bombay High Court ordered women to be allowed entry into Haji Ali Dargah in a landmark ruling in 2016. She was petitioner in the Triple Talaq matter in Supreme Court and campaigned extensively for its abolition. In its verdict on 22nd August 2017, the Supreme Court set Triple Talaq aside. Zakia works, writes, represents on issues concerning minorities, women's rights, human rights, pluralism and diversity, religious tolerance at different deliberations globally and in India. She has authored 2 books and writes regularly on these issues for various publications. In a period of over 30 years, she has taught business communication at the SJVM College of Gujarat University, been an editor in a leading publication, headed the education program of a global technology company, been whole-time director in a management consulting company and a director in a voluntary organization. And also, I want to tell all of you here that she's been my former colleague in ActionAid. And so over a decade and a half, we have been together in ActionAid. And, so we are looking forward to listening to you, Zakia. So over to you, Zakia, talking on patriarchy in the 21st century. And I just want to add here that we all, both the men and women, are survivors of patriarchy in this part of the world, as well as in the other part of the world, So over to you, Zakia. Thank you.
Of course. Hi, thanks, Indu. And hi again, everybody. And thanks, Dr. Arjun Kumar and IMPRI for this opportunity. I must say that it's not some great academic talk that is going to take place now. These are just some observations coming from a person who, through the course of her own life, discovered human rights, discovered that she is also has been a victim of patriarchy, and then started, engaging towards upholding women's rights and women's equality. So it's coming more, from a practitioner's point of view. And since we are all, co-travelers in this journey, so it's not as though, I have something new to say, which, all of us are not already aware of. So it's like we're all in the fight together. So in that spirit, I would just like to make some observations, and then we can have a discussion, and we can have, we can better enhance each other's, understandings and learnings, and that's the approach. And I think that's the way in which we should look at this whole interaction. So I want to just begin by saying that patriarchy is amongst the one of the oldest scourges of humankind, as dangerous and as deadly as death, as dangerous and as deadly as disease and epidemics, as dangerous as any kind of natural calamities, as dangerous as any war or conflict ever fought, on the face of the earth. Patriarchy is a system where a handful subjugate and dominate the rest of the people, and typically the handful happen to be men, and those dominated are women. But having said that, it's all of us, the women as well as the men, all of us are victims of patriarchy. It's not as though it's only the man who oppresses the woman, and all the it's not like that. We all know that because patriarchy is all pervasive. It's there within us, it's there inside of our family, it's there in our communities, in our society, and in our polity. Our state is the ultimate kind of rakhwala of this kind of a patriarchal system. So we'll come to that. And also, over the ages and historically speaking, lot of kind of, as humankind has evolved, and a lot of experimentation, innovation has happened. But one of the constants which has always remained, which has never gone away from the face of the earth, then it is the system of patriarchy. So be they earlier in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages, be they, following the Enlightenment and following the Industrial Revolution and arrival of democracy. Even today, there is patriarchy. We all know that. And it needs to be understood how patriarchy sort of changes itself, mutates and transforms and enmeshes itself with the existing power structures, be they monarchy, be they dictatorship, be they democracy, be they electoral democracy, but patriarchy is always thriving. So it gets so well enmeshed. That's the kind of monster that we are dealing with here, which mutates as per the situation but never goes away. So that's the point that I wanted to make. It's also that some of us may be fortunate enough to be aware that we have been subjected to patriarchy, and people around us are subjected to patriarchy. Not many of us may be so fortunate to be aware, and that's how also I feel that patriarchy further perpetuates itself. So it's like all pervasive, it's omnipresent. It doesn't matter which part of the globe we are born in. Doesn't matter we belong to a developed world or we belong to the poorer countries. Whether we dwell in a village or we are in the metros, it affects all of us. But yes, my second point is that patriarchy's worst phase comes forward when there's a nexus of caste and patriarchy, or religion and patriarchy, and ethnicity and location and patriarchy. So we'll come back to this point about religion and patriarchy, because that's my area of work, and that's my area of engagement, and that's my area of activism. So maybe I can share some more experiences from that particular point of view. So next point I want to make is that how COVID-19 and its handling of the entire situation has furthered patriarchy in our country, and perhaps in other countries as well. So beginning with something as simple as the lockdown, how it has further increased the destitution and the marginalization of people, how it has rendered so many people who were earning very very dignified livelihoods and were making trying to make a life for themselves, how they have been virtually rendered homeless, destitute, and they have been virtually forced to beg. So this furtherance of patriarchy has happened thanks to the mindless kind of not a very judicious kind of a carefully thought through kind of a policy system. And it has also led to a overall dilution of democracy in our public life, as well as in our homes and in our society. Something as simple as the whole concept of social distancing, the terminology of social distancing, which can, if somebody is around who specializes in, understanding caste-based discrimination, would throw more light on that, how this terminology of social distancing is so problematic. Rather than saying that let's keep physical distance, let's keep, some kind of a gap, between human interaction wherever it takes place. We are very easily sort of adopted this kind of terminology of social distancing. We have all, turned into some kind of vigilantes. There have been, various policies, various laws pertaining to emergency situation which have been invoked by all governments, state governments, central governments. How can a poor person who is deprived of his daily wage because of the lockdown and because of the pandemic can pay, how can he or she pay a fine of 500 rupees for not wearing a mask? If he is stopped by the roadside, that where is your mask, and the police asks him for a fine, how is he or she going to pay the 500 rupees? So it has led to overall dilution of democracy. And this, this romance about, in some circles, about work from home, and how initially, some middle class men, how daddies turned into chefs. Fine, that's welcome. That's a welcome thing. Even if it's for a day or for a week or for a month, that's the welcome thing. But, there is data with the UN. There is data with our own various women's commissions and various civil society organizations, which are now showing that how work from home has led to increased domestic violence and increased harassment of women and increased demands on the women, both in terms of unpaid care work, both in terms of child caring responsibilities, and also in terms of sexual demands by the partners, and that has further led to violence. So that whole, that all those details are now coming out. It's also led to women being, further being forced to drop out of the workforce. It has led to women being forced to accept any work which is paying even lower than earlier kind of wages. It has given rise to incidents of child labor, because 6 to 7 months of destitution and desperation, economically speaking, has taken a huge toll on communities, on families, and particularly on the women and children. And all this has, in the face of the lack of basic healthcare and basic facilities, which are in any case, our health system has been, hugely privatized in the last couple of decades or so. And it's become extremely difficult for the poor people to be able to find any kind of health services. A lot of public hospitals, civil hospitals are we are hearing complaints about how patients are complaining about discrimination because they come from a poor background, because they come from rural backgrounds, because they don't have any kind of clout. So all this is happening. So this has led to overall dilution of democracy, and thereby furthering patriarchy and further strengthening patriarchal practices, patriarchal mindsets, and patriarchal attitudes. And it is also kind of legitimized those kind of attitudes. So very simple example, and it's not true only of Delhi, it is true of all our cities, where of late, like Indu is an expert again in this area, we've come upon this whole phenomenon of organized living and the RWAs, or the cooperative housing societies and their office bearers. So it has become like a private, like they have become bodies which have become above constitution and above all norms of equality and justice. So it has led to, in so many spheres of life, the COVID-19 and its handling has led to furthering of patriarchy. And even when the vaccine comes, we don't know whether those who are really needy and those who are really urgently in need of the vaccine, what kind of attention and priority they are going to get. As of now, it is very, very uncertain. So this whole epidemic has also kind of, watered down whatever little gains. Not that there were many gains on this count, but the economy was already not doing well before the arrival of the pandemic. But I must also say that increasingly, uh, as our as our you know in as our country has so-called become liberalized beginning early 90s, and in the last 3 decades, some amount of some amount of uh, freedoms have come to our women to be able to go out of their homes, to be able to go and participate as a workforce, or go out for higher education, go and live in big cities, look for livelihoods, find employment, and parents and family remain back home. So even in that kind of circumstances, there has been a backlash from patriarchy. So we are seeing increased violence against women, increased in the age of internet. We are seeing incidents of cyber stalking. We are seeing how everybody is trolled. Everybody who has a point of view with which others don't agree is trolled on the social media and on the internet. But women are particularly trolled with a lot of offensive and vulgar sexual kind of material, photos, videos, innuendos, statements, everything, and there is no recourse. There is no legal recourse. There is no social recourse. So even as in some small sections of our society, women and girls are taking that initiative to come out and to try and make sense of life, and to try and be independent, to attain education, to try and be independent economically. There's a huge backlash in our society, and the state is the biggest force which is kind of presiding over this kind of a patriarchal setup. So I want to discuss a little bit about the nexus between religion and patriarchy, and how.
Ma'am, we have the slides ready, so as you suggest, we can move. Yes.
Yeah, so we can go to the slide on religion and patriarchy, caste, religion, patriarchy, something like that.
This one?
Yeah, this one,
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. So yeah, next, can we go to the next, please? So I will not really go into the the how patriarchy is exacerbated on account of caste, because there are any number of people who are working in that area, and I actually don't have so much experience on this, but we know the latest examples. We have seen what is happening in UP. We have seen the Hathras. Before that also all over UP, in other parts of the country like Maharashtra, in Rajasthan, in Haryana, we have seen how there is just no value of a woman's life, especially if she belongs to a quote unquote lower caste, especially if she comes from Dalit background, and how helpless her family, how helpless her whole community is. We are seeing live examples going all around. So I'm leaving that out, but I would like to talk somewhat at length about the nexus between patriarchy and religion. And we all know, like in the beginning also, Indu was saying that we are all citizens of India, and we're all citizens of this earth, and of course we are citizens of South Asia. And fortunately or unfortunately, ours is a region marked by high kind of religiosity. So we have ours is a region where all religions of the world have followers here. And unfortunately, the politics in our country and in our region is fully enmeshed. Politics and religion are fully enmeshed. And of late, we are seeing the heightened kind of religious polarization. And we're seeing how society is being divided, how humanity is being divided in the name of religion, and how all kind of medieval mindsets are being furthered. But before coming to that, we also need to look at how the values of our constitution, which are about gender justice, which are about gender equality. Of course, also they are also about social justice. They're about a right to dignified life for everybody. And there also the same constitution also gives us the right to religious freedom. But then what are the values, which are prevalent in our society and in different faith communities? So, and those values are hugely influenced by the perceived, values emanating from their own respective religions. And we know, somebody said that Manusmriti is not, cannot be compared to Bible or to Quran, but it's not really like that, because the High Court of Rajasthan in Jaipur recently, in the last few years, they have installed a huge statue of Manu. So Manu Bhagwan mante hain log. And Manusmriti has so many problematic things to say about women, about place of women in society, and everything, the kind of adjectives which are used for women in the Manusmriti. And when we see what is happening all around us in society, then we feel that a good percentage of our society is very much influenced, very much still under the influence of Manu and the sayings from the Manusmriti, where things like never trust women, women are dash dash dash, and I won't even sort of spell out those words. Those kind of words are used for women.
Yes.
Women and quote unquote Shudras. And it has, they have also, this I find in common between Manusmriti and some of the biblical anecdotes and some of the, sort of stories rooted in the Islamic settings. Women are hugely demonized as evil creatures, as highly sexual creatures, as, lustful creatures who are a threat to social order, who are a threat to social balance, and therefore they should be controlled, they should be reined in. So it's like women are cattle, and they have a whole well developed kind of logic about why women need to be reined in, controlled. There are so many there are so many anecdotes, verses, so many commentaries. I'll just give you one example. There was one gem of a person who has written a book on how women are evil creatures, and all his pages are, they go on and on about that. And then in the end, he has a chapter where he says, therefore, the number of women in hell is so high. That gentleman died a century ago. I want to, if he were alive, I wanted to question him that when did you make this visit to hell to count the number of men and women there to arrive at this conclusion that women are evil and therefore their population in hell is so high. So it's like it's like it's unreasonable. It is ludicrous to say the least. But the problem arises because in our society, the family unit, which is the primary unit of family can be both very empowering and very disempowering. So if you are lucky, your family can be very good. Your family may not discriminate between you and your brother. You're very fortunate. Your family may give equal opportunity to the girls and the boys. You're very lucky. But that good fortune comes to, I don't know what percentage of people. So by and large, the family relationships, the family roles are defined in a very, very gender unfriendly way. So the role for the woman particularly be she daughter, be she married woman, be she wife, be she daughter-in-law. We all know how hugely problematic that is. And that draws legitimacy from so-called religious, perceived religious diktats and perceived religious injunctions, where either, depending on which religion you're coming from, marriage is either a sacred relationship, which is janam janam ka saath, or marriage is a contract, but the society has not educated you about your rights in the contract. So again, it's given a lot of right to the husband, where he can just instantly utter these three words, talaq, 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 and you may be his wife for 5 years or 50 years, you can be immediately thrown out. You become haram because he has uttered these three words, and you have nowhere to go, and you lose everything. You lose your world so far. So lot of our practices, mindsets, attitudes, they draw strength from religion. And also problematic is the part about the question of authority in religion, which is almost solely male, which is almost solely misogynist and patriarchal. The places of worship are all also under the domination of men, trusts headed by men. Even if there are some women there, they are just women who are not empowered and who are not allowed to take part in the decision making. So religion has huge connections with patriarchy, and perhaps one of the reasons that we continue to be such a patriarchal society is also because we are a very, very religious society, I feel. We can discuss this. My last point is, what do we do? What do we do in the face of such rampant patriarchy? How do we build a greater kind of coming together, a greater kind of understanding? Because we don't want to. Patriarchy is a system which we want to definitely dethrone and replace, but we want to replace it with humanism, with liberal humanism. We don't want to replace patriarchy with further patriarchy. And these days we are also seeing competitive patriarchies. So yeah, so it's very, very problematic. So how do we bring in the values of justice, equality, non-discrimination, dignity, irrespective of gender? How do we make them these values mainstream values? Because our constitution is based on these values. Various articles talk about, uphold these principles, but our society, there's a gap between the practiced values in our society and what is, talked about in our constitution. So how do we sort of fill that gap? How do we make, when we're talking about women's equality, and we are talking about when we're imagining a just and fair world, when we're imagining a world, based on feminist principles, how do we make this rhetoric, how do we expand it? How do we make it legible to include more and more people in this struggle? So that is the challenge in front of us, because having women's studies departments is a good beginning. But how do we rope in the woman who lives in that slum in Eastern Delhi, whose home has been burned down during the Delhi riots, and who has been subjected to sexual humiliation and assault during the riots? So how do we make sense to her? How do we sort of rope her in to stand alongside in this whole struggle for equality and against patriarchy? That's a challenge. And of course, what always remains a challenge is how to make state accountable, because maybe increasing numbers of increasing women's participation, giving reservation to women in our legislature can be one way out, but till the society reforms, can that be it can be part of the solution, but we will need to do much more than that. Affirmative action can always happen, but affirmative action also has to take into account that all women are marginalized, all women are left behind, but some women are more marginalized. They are bearing a greater brunt of patriarchy because they are poor, because they are Dalit, because they come from this religious background, because they are women in Kashmir, or because there are women in the northeastern states, we know what has happened in the states of the northeast under AFSPA, and how women have bore the brunt of all the entire resistance and the backlash. So how do we sort of negotiate these kind of things? Also, I mean, I always feel that South Asia has been a region. Early on, we had so many women prime ministers. We had our Indira Gandhi. We had our the Sirimao in Bhandar Naike in Sri Lanka. We had Benazir Bhutto. We have had Khalida Zia, and now we have Sheikh Hasina. And within India, also so many states we have women politicians and representatives. But unlike some other places, and I really admire the prime ministers of New Zealand and of Finland. Unlike those places, us having women prime ministers so long ago, when it was unthinkable for most countries of the world, but that has not percolated at the grassroots. It has not help alleviate the condition of women in our respective countries in South Asia. So we had, we have had this kind of a contradiction where we had these very, very empowered women who became prime ministers all over the countries of South Asia. But somehow the Indian woman and the South Asian woman still remains, a very, very starkly a victim of patriarchy. So that's a kind of, that speaks volumes for the kind of society that we are. But again, I feel that the hope comes from whatever little experience I have had in the last about a decade or so. The hope comes from a lot of young girls, and a lot of young girls and young boys also. I would say both young women and young men who have started questioning, who have started, who believe in their own independence, and who recognize the autonomy and the right to independence of the other person, who believe in the values of equality and mutual respect and mutual tolerance and dignity. So I feel that the hope comes from there. But that said, it's a long drawn out kind of a struggle. And as fellow activists and as co-travelers, I think we'll need to do a lot more to arrive at small solutions at our various locations, no matter where we are, which part of the globe, which part of the country, and in which sphere, whichever area of influence that we are. We need to sort of bring about this kind of thinking, which is based on liberal humanist values, which are also the values at the heart of our constitution. So how do we bring about this kind of a civic, if I may use that word? I know a lot of people will bounce on me for that, but if we can bring about that kind of a civic consciousness or a civic nationalism, where we all resolve that we will fight patriarchy and injustice, and we'll fight for dignity and equality for all fellow women and men. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. Indu?
Yeah, sure. Zakia, first of all, I must say it was very interesting presentation. And I think surely, I'll just try to just say as to what all you just, spoke about in briefly. And then maybe I think I also want you to talk about BMMA and about your, the entry at Hazi Ali and all that. But I just want to say, friends, Zakia spoke about some very interesting views she had about patriarchy, which we all agree to. That is the oldest scourge, and how it's a dangerous disease, a dangerous epidemic, a war, the system whereby a handful of men subject a large number of people, both men and women. And I think we all agree to that. And how patriarchy mutates and adjusts to all dominations, be it that of democracy, be that of dictatorships or monarchy or whatever. That how it perpetuates itself. I think somewhere Also, I think, Zakia brought about this issue of how, during the lockdown, how a state actually, by using the term social distancing and all, actually perpetuated patriarchy. And it's a problematical term, and where in fact many of us, in fact, kept speaking about, physical distancing than social distancing as such. I also want to say here that, Zakia, you mentioned about whole lot of issues as to how, what happened to lockdown, it impacted on the poor and the women and the girls. And also how, I think, there was one important thing when you spoke about the organized living, that how the RWAs and all, they try to sanitize the area and all. Like in Delhi, we had friends like Manisha Priyam and all, who were fighting with their own RWAs in Navjeevan Vihar, where the vendors were not allowed for 3 months to come and sell. Okay, and they were reeling under poverty. And she had to file complaints in the police station against the RWA for some action to be taken place, So I think it was actually, it's like at every level, the poor suffered. And amongst the poor, the women suffered the worst, So I think you bring in very important aspects. You talk about a nexus between religion, patriarchy, and politics. I think this is something which I would really want to, you to further touch upon and maybe just talk further on that. And then I suppose, you spoke about also certain aspects where we can have a positive, intervention or transformation. And you spoke about the women's reservation, how it's important. And I want to share here with you, that there was a delegation of ours who had gone and met the first woman president of India, Pratibha Patilji, on 29th of July 2010. And I was only man in that entire delegation of women. So we were 10 people. And then I just told Pratibha ji, ma'am, actually we are asking for 30% reservation, but I personally feel that it should be 50% reservation, because women have not been kept into power at all for these many years. So if you're talking reservation, not 30 but 50%. You know what she said? अरे भाई ये 33% भी नहीं होने दे रहे हैं, 50% कभी नहीं होने देंगे लोग जो है. Now, if the president of the country thinks like that, imagine what would be the status of patriarchy in the country. Two is, I think you mentioned very important aspects about how our religion has been biased against women. And Zakia, in fact, for you and for other friends, I think I'll do this reading from my first book, where in the Bible it says, how can he be clean that is born of a woman? That's Bible. The Devi Bhagavad is declaring, women are neither friends nor foes. They perpetually crave for every new man. They desire any well-dressed male they see. But in order to obtain what they want, they make a show of chastity. In public, women are ever modest. But when they get to the beloved in the private, they make as if to devour them. They bestow more affection on men. Like all that rubbish. And the worst is, Govindji is here. I have a quotation from, we respect this man. We respect what he spoke about in Chicago in the 1893, Vivekanand, Swami Vivekanand.
Yeah.
Some of these great leaders have also been patriarchs.
Yeah,
You know what he's saying? What he's saying somewhere? He's saying that even I who never married, belonging to the order that never marries, would be disgusted if my wife, supposing I had married, dared to displease my mother. I would be disgusted. Why? Don't I worship my mother? Why should not her daughter-in-law, whom I worship, why not she? Who is she then that would try to ride over my head and govern my mother? Now, these are the spiritual leaders who were actually, who should have guided the society. Now, the problem is some of the spiritual leaders also, Zakia, they were actually victims and, survivors of patriarchy.
Yeah.
So as you spoke about, I think similarly in the Islamic texts and all, there's one person called Murtada Mutahari, who's written the book on rights of women in Islam. He makes a mockery that Quran says, you should not marry more than one. It says shouldn't be having triple talaq, and then give reasons why it's done so. So I think somewhere we had patriarch justifying patriarchy, and time that I think you mentioned that we need to question it, and we need to have small solutions. And I also feel that maybe walking the talk is equally important. That many of us espouse few things but don't follow it.
Yes.
So, friends, I think these were some points I want to mention here, Zakia, and then I would now request Govindji to, maybe say some words, and then we'll open it for discussion to other friends also. Thank you, Zakia. Thank you for this wonderful talk, and you have left ample time for discussion. So, thank you for the brief
Thanks.
talk that you gave. And then we'll have Arjun and Simi also,
Yeah.
and Professor Day as well, and Govind. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes,
Govindji.
yes.
What do I say? It's wonderful when you agree on everything. Whereas, yes, I come from a kind of very religious family, and I have seen with my own eyes what you were saying, and having read a lot of some scriptures, not lot, and then including Ramayana, which is a common kind of thing. So that dhol gamar shudra pasnari ye sab tadan ke adhikari. So it is the beating of the drum, beating of the cattle, beating of women. Unless you do this, they are not really shudras. Kind of you cannot. You cannot manage society. Order depends on violence against women. This is how the Hindu religion teaches us. Okay, that is the so. But I was thinking that patriarchy started in the women's movement early, as we know that kind of thing, because we didn't want to really decipher patriarchy. Some researchers, it's all over us. We were experiencing day in, day out. Later, we began to see that what is this patriarchy, where it has come. So only in slight disagreement with you, Zakia, I would say that it is not really eternal. It has grown with the society. If it was eternal, it could not change. Okay, like caste system developed, like other things developed, patriarchy also developed, and it took forms. It's a kind of girgit or chameleon kind of thing that it took various forms. It has roots in our cultures, in our religions, and in capitalist systems. So that was, and it changes its form as it takes. I mean, wage disparity. Just see in the modern capitalist system what happens, and the women's denigration as the kind of lowest kind of secondary, whose purpose is to serve men, whether and having so many rituals around this. And I'm sorry, this is the purpose of difficulty. Hello, hello. Sorry. So I think we need, I'm sorry, we need to really address these things. That is the kind of thing that it is so powerful, it is so around us, we grow up with these things that it becomes difficult to really address these issues. I find three components of patriarchy, and that is only kind of reading some Maria Gimbutas. Her work is very, very powerful. She has shown in archaeological kind of histories that he is, what is the book known as Living Goddess or something, that how the earlier systems were matrilineal, and to some where women and men have the equal rights, and the lineage depended on women because they produce. Everybody knew who is the kind of mother, and father was not known. So this is the so three components I think comes: male control over women's body. That is the, and how this male control over, for example, birthing is the natural process, whether one is married, unmarried, widowed kind of thing. But I grew up in a village and in Uttar Pradesh, and when a woman, a widowed woman got pregnant, then only two options were left for her. Either she was killed, either she would kill herself, or the family members would kill her. I mean, this was the kind of honor that is, and to a large extent. I mean, so it is the control of the woman's body on her sexuality. Labor, whose labor kind of is controlled, who controls the labor, that we all know kind of thing, not only capitalists, but within society also. Produce of the labor in agriculture sector, we know very well it go to who is the head of the household. And third kind would be the resources. I work on land rights a lot, and the land is always considered as the male subject. Whenever the land comes, In our minds also it has become. So the worst kind of colonization of the mind becomes when we think, oh, this is so natural, huh? That as if that it is a kind of something like we believe in God, although we have never seen the God. So we believe in this kind of system, thinking that, oh, this is the way it should be done. This is the part of our culture. So many answers come, that is the culture. But how do we really make a state accountable? I am great kind of admirer of Engels, who said that if any human being has to have the freedom, family and the state have to wither away. Hmm. And withering away does not mean that you live in the family, but the nature all has to be transformed. And today we see these two institutions, state and family, we really see that they are the kind of most, it is in COVID, pre-COVID and post-COVID situation also. It is within family that you are nurtured like a subordinate person, you are trained into being a subordinate and subservient person, and you also tortured in these systems, and you run from, there is no course, where do you go if you don't live in the family? So we need to look at really reworking of these institutions. I will not take more time, but I was thinking we need to do really more research and advocacy. We should not feel that nothing can be done. There is change happening in our thinking, in women's thinking, in men's thinking. Not men's thinking is little limited, because limited in number, limited in ideas, because they are the privilege holders. Huh? So when the privileges are there, things don't change easy. So a lot of people would be there who would be writing on women's rights, but you go home and then they relax and the partner does the rest of the thing. So that's why the housework has become. So I was thinking that probably we should also learn from matrilineal systems where things have changed. Meghalaya is a very living example, but they are not as bad either in COVID or in violence against women as the rest of the patriarchal India has become. So that is the Professor Utpal, he is from, I mean, he's living there probably. But I have done some work on matrilineal societies, how in Yunnan, in China, and Thailand, and also in India. And I find that how women have been kept out from knowledge, and whether it knowledge may be regarding the salt only, and how they have been killed. That also the Malaysian history shows. Powerful women. So this was the systemic institution. So probably we need to really unlearn a lot of things, and we have to not get fatigued and say that men are like that. That doesn't, system has become like that. Our mothers have become like that. We train our boys like that and train our girls like that. And the last thing we would say is the kind of more research and advocacy on gendered social norm, changing of the gendered social norm, which you bring very well. That kind of thing in terms of whether it is Islam, it is Christianity, or it is Hinduism, all these religio-cultural forces that control us, I think we need to see that how they can change. Certainly, and they have been changing. It is not that we have not changed them, but they have not been changing enough, and they change only an ad hoc basis. Hindu Succession Amendment Act, which gave the amendment, property rights to women, but it has not been implemented, or very, very marginally implemented. But it goes against the Hindu code bill and Hindu system where she is supposed to be. So, and there are a number of things. Caste system has changed, sati has changed, number of things are changing. So it is not that we have not changed social cultural norm. They have changed, but they have not changed enough, and not changed with the speed that we need kind of transformation of society. So probably our hope lies in working towards it, in repeatedly questioning, as you have questioned very well, and that would be the my kind of footnote, what you have said. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed, Zakia, very much your presentation.
Thank you, Govindji. Simi and Arjun, you want to say something, or then we open up for discussion to others?
Yes.
Yeah, Simi, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, to all the panelists. So wonderfully and fascinatingly put forth by Zakia ma'am, and also supplemented by yourself, Indu sir, and Govind ma'am. I have just two quick points to make, which also ends with questions, perhaps rhetorical. Is that, ma'am, it is actually very unfortunate that even in the 21st century, patriarchy has become so deeply embedded in the Indian society and also across the world that when one speaks of women or one speaks of girls, it is seen that they are recipients of empowerment or emancipation, that they need or they deserve emancipation or empowerment, and not as someone or as individuals who are already emancipated or who are already empowered. This whole discourse on empowerment has created a problematic narrative, according to me, that the whole female gender is a poor thing, or it is a bechari gender. Do you think this needs a rectification, or should we continue with using such terminology as women empowerment? And second question is, has the recent step of triple talaq by the government helped the Muslim women in theory and in practice? I ask this because we have made changes, many changes, and this one is also one of the changes on paper, but the regressive patriarchal mindset which has gripped the society since ages, it continues to be ingrained. So what are your views on this, ma'am? Thank you.
Yes,
Over
Zakia
to
ma'am.
you, Indu.
Yes, ma'am.
So I should speak, Indu?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Simi, you're very right. Indu here is sitting with that badge, Beti Zindabad, and we have had a whole lot of discussion for almost like lasting for a year, that Beti Bachao is so problematic.
Yes.
And the difference between Bachao and Zindabad. Indu, you remember that, no? So
Yeah,
from Beti,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the difference between Beti Bachao and Beti Zindabad is exactly what you're saying, Simi, and yes, you're right. Unfortunately, we are in such a predicament कि बचाना भी मुमकिन नहीं हो रहा है, So yeah, so it's like we are all at so many different counts. We have so many multiple kind of complexities. So, but you're very right that what should be the vision? What should be the theory? It should be based on the autonomy of the woman and the agency of the woman and the girl, and her agency to be able to sort of stand up and fight for her rights. But yeah, having said that, we also know that that's not easy. So even when our government recognizes by Beti Bachao also, we are happy. हम गर्विदा होते हैं कि चलो at least they've acknowledged. So that's how things go for us, unfortunately, in our part of the world. And this triple talaq, yeah, you are very right. See, it's also we have to keep in mind that the Muslim community is a community, large sections of which are very, very poor, and also very, very deprived educationally, economically, socially. And there is also a political kind of atmosphere of fear. So it was a huge achievement for the women to come out and speak and raise their voices and not sort of not give up in the face of so much adversity. So it started happening for some time now in this whole decade, 2010-11 onwards, where women started coming out and speaking. And when a few women spoke out, more women joined the struggle. That's how. And it ultimately grew into a big kind of a campaign group. And then, of course, we went to the Supreme Court. Some 7-8 women went to the Supreme Court. And then we started demanding justice, not just as per the Constitution of India, but also as per the Quranic precepts of justice. Because we felt that why should we give up on our, right? As a Muslim, also we are entitled to justice as much as we are entitled to justice as citizen of India. So that's how the fight went on, and it was set aside by the Supreme Court. So it led to a huge awareness within the community, genuine awareness that this method of divorce is not sanctioned by the Quran. So I think that has been the biggest achievement. So, and we have also had cases where men, once they realize that, once they are convinced that no, this is not Quranic, then they say, no, no, I don't want to do it this way then. I want to do it the right way. So to say it, in all fairness. So that has happened. Now this law has come, it's about over a year now. The law came in 2000, it's like 1.5 years now for the law, but it's still very, very new. And also because of this added onslaught by way of laws like CAA and the incidents of violence, lynchings, all that happening, and the talk about NRC and also it's kind of pushed the community inward once again. So those gains, it's always you're choosing between devils and deep seas. It's like that. So, but women are becoming aware, and families are also becoming aware that that there is a legality now involved. And if somebody is indulging in this kind of instant triple divorce, then it's illegal. So ये समझ तो इतनी तो आ गई है. It's a good beginning. Of course, we'll have a time alone. It'll sort of, but it'll take time for the law to be sort of seeped in, perfected, implemented. वो सब तो क्योंकि आज की तारीख में भी it is very, very difficult to get an FIR registered if the woman has been given instant triple talaq. So we are facing this problem everywhere because the police being what it is and our setup being so patriarchal. और तुम्हारे में तो यही होता है. तुम्हारा तो मज़हब ही ये है. These are the kind of responses. So yeah, but it's a good beginning, and the fact that it was initiated and led by women makes it all the more important.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thanks.
Zakia, you want to talk about the Haji Ali entry and all that you all fought for?
Yeah. So it's like I'm sure Indu, you have also been to Haji Ali. Whenever you
I've been to yes.
So it's Haji Ali is a place which is dear to so many of us. You don't have to be necessarily a Muslim to be going to Haji Ali. Like that church in Bandra, या कोई ऐसा बड़ा सा मंदिर है जो फेमस है तो हम सब जाते हैं वहां. मतलब that is the pluralism in lived kind of pluralism of our people. So it so happened कि जब भी मीटिंग कहीं भी होती है तो कभी ऐसा टाइम होता है तो फिर औरतों की तरफ से भी ये आता है कि भाई if there is any dargah nearby, and especially if it's in a meeting is in Ajmer, then we will have to go to Ajmer Dargah because औरतें जाना चाहती हैं. Dargah is a place where the women like to go to. So similarly, we had a big meeting in Bombay, and after the meeting in the evening, सबने तय किया कि we'll go to Haji Ali. चलो घूमने जाएंगे, खाएंगे पिएंगे वापस आएंगे ऐसे. तो we went there, and we went right up to the mazar. This was in 2010. We went into the mazar, offered ziyarat, सबने अपना किया करके फिर हम आए. फिर से हमारी एक बार मीटिंग हुई 1 साल के बाद. तो जब हम then we all went, we were shocked कि वहां पे बैरिकेड लगा दिए और बोर्ड लगा दिया था कि भाई औरतें women cannot come further from this barricade. मतलब औरतें यहाँ से आगे पाबंदी है, आने पे पाबंदी है. So we were horrified. We said just last year तो हम आए थे, तो अभी क्या ऐसे फर्क आ गया. तो we thought we'll just ask them. तो we asked जो वहाँ पे जो कीपर थे उनको पूछा तो उन्होंने बोला हमें नहीं मालूम, आप बोर्ड पढ़ लो और बोर्ड के मुताबिक आप अंदर नहीं आ सकते हो. तो सर आपको ज्यादा सवाल लग रहे हैं तो आप वो ऑफिस से ऑफिस में जाके वहां बात करो. तो we went to the office, तो बात की. तो they said then उन्होंने बोला कि नहीं वो हमारा रूल है, शरीयत का रूल है. तो we said शरीयत तो पिछले साल नहीं बदल सकती ना. शरीयत तो हम पिछले साल आके गए, हम मजार के अंदर तक गए, सेंटरम तक गए, तो क्या ये नई शरीयत हो गई इस साल से? So that's how the whole argument started. And then we said we want to meet your trustees. So वो वहीं से ऑफिस में से हमको बोलना शुरू कर दिया कि तुम आजाद औरतें हो, तुम लोगों का खराब है, कोई ट्रस्टियों के पास टाइम नहीं है तुम्हारे पे बर्बाद करे, उन्हें कोई काम नहीं है क्या, ये वो सब हुआ. But still we thought we'll follow this up. And because we are a women's organization, so it was like now a political issue for us. So then we came back and then we forgot about it, and then we took it up after 3-4 months, and then we discussed कि क्या करना है. So we thought we'll write to the trustees, narrating this whole thing and how we want an explanation because it's a public place. It's a public place where everybody comes, people of all faith come. So we wrote to them, we sent a registered kind of a letter, registered AD, and we also sought an appointment. But we never heard from them after that. So again 6 months निकल गया, ऐसे इतने सारे काम होते हैं, you know how it is. So again then जब हमारी बातचीत हुई तो we thought चलो फिर से एक reminder भेजते हैं. So this time they refused to accept our letter. So now we realize कि अभी तो मामला गरमा रहा है. So ये सब कर, then we complained to the Minorities Commission or Maharashtra का, we went to the State Women's Commission. Then it was a kind of a small campaign. ये सब करने में 2.5 साल लग गया हमको. So we kept on writing, but they kept on refusing, and they kept on giving statements in the media कि औरतों को पाबंदी है, शरिया में औरतों को allowed नहीं है, ये सब एक बन गया हो तब तक ये. So then when we had our annual convention where all states come, all state leaders come, some 500-600 women come, then we put this across कि भाई अभी क्या करना है. अभी इसमें 2.5 साल हो गया है. They are not paying any heed to us. They are not listening to us. They are not responding to us. At the same time, they are denying women entry in the sanctum. ये तो हम accept कर नहीं सकते. So the women said that we should continue the dialogue. लेकिन dialogue में, if we feel we will not get a resolution, then we should take them to court. So this was the feedback which came from all our 12 or 13 states where we were working, and we minuted all this. So then when we finally went to court, it was almost like 2.5 to 3 years by the time we reached court. The first thing the Bombay High Court asked us, tell us why should we admit your PIL. And luckily, lo and behold, we had saved all those letters which were rejected by the trust. We had saved all those minutes of the meetings where women had given their opinions, and also the various meetings which were done by the Minorities Commission, Women's Commission. So all that bunch of pura palinda हमने court के सामने रख दिया. And then after that they admitted the petition. And of course, I mean, how it went, it's all there in the public domain. But one of the judges, it was a 2-judge bench. One of the judges, the lady judge, she said on that day, which is sort of so important. She said, in her observation, she said, I'm not even going. I need not go into the elaborate arguments given by the women as to why they should be allowed to enter the sanctum. The arguments that the trust has given in opposition is sufficient to tell me that you are driven by a whole practice of discrimination and injustice to women. She said this. So, मतलब इतने ridiculous arguments उन्होंने दिए हैं. They are saying कि the dead are buried in the kabristan, and जो dead होते हैं उनको औरतें quote unquote नंगी दिखती हैं. So like it is the saying that a man projects God in his own image. So a person who is obsessed by woman and sexual, I mean, what do I say? I mean, they gave such ridiculous arguments. So finally, of course, the Bombay High Court ruled in our favor because the Sharia cannot change overnight. And our contention was that today you are denying women. Tomorrow you will say only Muslims will come. No non-Muslims will come. After that, you will say only Sunni Muslims will come. Only Sunni Muslim men will come. So we thought this kind of intolerance needs to be, checked. And we have constitutional mechanisms. And we have both. We have the Islamic support also, because Sharia Sharia means whose Sharia? Sharia as per whose understanding? Not as per their own patriarchal, misogynist understanding. Because according to us, Sharia is Islamic law. And law will always take into account both sides, the well-being of both sides. Law cannot be one-sided and sort of blind to the plight of the other party. So that's how we challenged and we won. But they did not accept it. They went to Supreme Court again. Supreme Court told them, you better abide by the High Court, Bombay High Court judgment. Otherwise, do you want us to take this up? And then luckily their lawyer was a sensible person, a very big person. So he talked them into accepting it. And now after that, we all went there, some 300-400 of us, and then we did our ziyarat, and yeah, they gave us tea and biscuits also. So they were so kind. Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations, Zakia, for pursuing it, and what a way to succeed, and be pursuing it, Yeah. There are some questions, Zakia. Also, I'll read the questions, so that I think we can also answer those questions, right? Just one sec. Yeah, there's a question from a friend which says, what I wanted to share from personal experience. A response is, I have been noticing the impact of who is a political leader affecting my life directly. Most likely in the past, every policy decision taken by politically elected person has impacted my life. But as a young person, I have not felt a direct impact on my life as I have due to leadership, as I have in the last 3 decades as a girl / woman. I found my responses to demonetization and even to COVID were a personal response of how is a man deciding what my life is going to be for the next months. It bothered me that a decision wasn't my own. I felt for the first time a direct patriarch affecting my social life outside home space, extending in social space. So COVID, for instance, I was very upset that some group of men decided when a quarantine will happen and how it will be implemented in a way that was not inclusive of my wisdom of how it should be done. And even this unlock is now not how I would want it to be. So to me, pandemic management response is also patriarchal. Then I think there's extension to it. Love that use of phrase co-fellow traveler. I also feel in these scenarios, again, as we know, in patriarchal systems, all women are not allies. For instance, I don't see Miss Indira Gandhi and the whole emergency as a great legacy, and have been someone who has experienced oppressive scenarios, even in the context where there have been women social justice workers or rights workers who I thought may be supportive to women, but weren't. And therefore, knowing how lived experiences are, or maybe, I also feel just being a woman doesn't mean a woman will be my ally in a patriarchal setup. And that's a concern too, at the moment, to find allies across genders who feel the same about issues, concerns, to find ways forward to break away from patriarchal setups and to not become an oppressor either, even unconsciously or otherwise, as we seek to break free from the patriarchal setup and mindset. And I think then, yeah, I want to voice concern of my father, where he's afraid of sending me alone after evening unless he trusts someone with me. It's his sole decision where I am not consulted, and I also don't feel to fight because his concern is also right. Shouldn't you think here fear sometimes perpetuates patriarchy, and we can say dominating decisions? These are small things which me as a child confuses me. I mean, he is right to prevent me from societal demons, but he's also wrong when he decides for me without consulting me and without knowing what I want. Zakia.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of us will appreciate, all the points which have been raised here. So these are the, experiences, day-to-day experiences of every young person, young woman, or a young girl in our society. And it's always a, back and forth, between the family wanting to protect you and you wanting your own independence to be able to go out whenever you choose. So yeah, so that has to be a negotiation, and that also has to be, we have to make safer public spaces. It should be possible for a girl to venture out, at 8 p.m., for instance, to go from, say, Saket to another place in the city. So it should be possible, but that's all again a collective kind of effort it will take, and it has to happen. Yeah, it has to happen. And yeah, that I mean, I agree that just by being a woman or a man, all women and all men are victims of patriarchy, and there is a patriarch in each one of us, isn't it? So even if somebody says I'm a feminist, but we have seen a lot of patriarchal behavior, from people who are who are declaring themselves, just declaring that I'm a feminist doesn't make me a feminist. So yeah, so there's a patriarch in each one of us. And also because the dominant system is the dominant thinking, the dominant approaches are all patriarchal. So we are bound to come across more patriarchal people than, fair and just-minded people. So it is not about one being a woman or one being a man. It's all of us. Because in so many places we hear this argument na कि औरत ही औरत की सबसे बड़ी दुश्मन होती है. So I mean it's a complex thing. Because you are such a dire victim of this system of patriarchy that is your dominant ideology you're exposed to. That's the only ideology you're exposed to, and you feel that this is the way forward. Like Dr. Govind also said कि हमको ही लगता है कि यही सही तरीका है. Like औरतें बोलती हैं मेरा हस्बैंड मुझे नहीं मारेगा तो कौन मारेगा. तो ये मतलब so it is yeah, because we are that's why I said that some of us are fortunate, at some stage in our lives we recognized that we are victims of patriarchy, and we are also perpetuating patriarchy in some contexts. So we are lucky. I for one, I realized it much later in my life. I was from a very sort of from a middle class background, from a well-educated family and all, but I knew nothing about feminism, nothing about patriarchy. I admit it, frankly. So for me, my life began only when I was 38. So I was myself the worst victim of patriarchy. So yeah, so it happens. So, but that's why the need to join hands and on several fronts and adopting so many approaches and so many strategies, and because also there is a whole lot of diversity. And when each one sits, each one comes from a lived context, a lived reality, which is specific to themselves. And there are also certain contexts which are common to us as a family, as a community, as a as a group of sort of co-travelers. Let us say that, for the want of any other word. So yeah, so it's an all-pervasive kind of a malaise. So the strategy to resist and build a counter worldview also will have to be at that scale and that wide. So I really understand, where this young person is coming from, and I'm sure all of us have come across so many such situations.
True. And Zakia, to the point that you were making, that I think many people say that, because when, in fact, Govindji is witness to some of these things, like, being a man, and Govindji, we were co-travelers, for last 30 years, we've been together in this movement. And there have been, times when there were some, men who, would come up and say the same thing, that, oh, you're fighting for women's issues, but what about women's oppression by women themselves? And, so my argument to that was, and which I think, came out also in research, was that, see, if a woman is an enemy of a woman, it's due to patriarchy, one. Two is, during the freedom struggle, during the colonialism, there were Indians in the British Army and British police. So these British police and British Army people were killing Indians. So do we say Indians are enemies of Indians?
Yeah.
We say Britishers were enemies of Indians. So similarly, if there's a woman who's harassing another woman, so they are survivors and victims of patriarchy. So let us understand that this is as you said, this is a diseased, defunct, a criminal system, which is patriarchy, and we need to smash patriarchy, the Brahmanical patriarchy as such. So we need to be very clear with our arguments also that, listen, only by doing away with patriarchy in our personal lives is the answer to it. And we need to fight, as you said, our small battles. Yeah. Larger battles will be fought through the small battles. It can't be fought at one end, It has to be fought with every commas and commas and commas and commas and semicolons and semicolons. Then there might be a full stop. Still, there might be another further, comma or semicolon, whatever, It goes on like that, So I think I want to just say that, because in the women's movement, Govindji, that was my argument, all through. And that, in a way, silenced some people, So it's important to understand that thing also, that we are survivors of patriarchy, and it's impacted both women and men.
That's right. I mean, this is 5,000 years of history, at least 5,000 years, and it won't go in 50 years. Maximum 50 years, we have kind of go back. That is the kind of. So it is really, it has embedded in us so much that sometimes we think, that yes, it is right, it is modest, a kind of not to answer men, to smile them, to sound a stupid kind of thing when the men are around, then you are liked by them. These are the statement by famous actors, artists, made kind of thing. And I don't look down upon them. It is the kind of artist statement that are there. But these things have changed so much kind of in other societies. And in our society also, they are changing. Somebody has given the example of Lynn, in fact, has given about Kangana Rawat. That is also very important in terms of recognizing when one takes a little bit of fight, then you see that you are, it seems like you are fighting the whole world. And you are, and the worst kind of thing that when we, that in the West, they say, you live with your enemies. Okay, you sleep with your enemy. Now, the question is, if you see this kind of thing, sleeping with the enemy means that probably when workers struggle against the employers, then there is a clear divide. But you are living in a family, you know your husband is a kind of patriarchal mindset, but at the same time you do something, some not to disrupt the thing, please, because you also calculate where do you go, the other kind of thing. So being resourceless, economically dependent, there are so many restrictions that also limit our put limit on our minds, that not to question that. I feel comfortable that okay, that husband is so bad, he's not so bad. Then we start comparing between bad to worse kind of human beings. And then also this thing comes that मेरा ही आदमी तो मारता है, कोई stranger तो नहीं है. This is the kind of thing that comes. So I think these calculations have also very much, patriarchy also has very material background, that what has to see that why be in the same society, why you are talking in a different way, why I am talking in a different way. We were not giving lessons in patriarchy like you, Zakia. I also was not given. It was, in fact, when I was a student at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, that time the whole university was closed because of the discrimination against women. So that's why I became that time aware. I began to look, I began to interact with my co-students. So, and when I came back, then people said, oh, these are Western ideas. You shed off these ideas, otherwise nobody would talk to you. I mean, people, somebody from JNU, a professor told me, who's a friend kind of thing, I don't want to name, but they said, nobody will talk to you if you share these ideas. So you see that how pervasive and how it is in the air, in the environment that we live. So its strength is very, very kind of, very all pervasive kind of atmosphere that we live in. Thank you.
In fact, Govindji and Zakia will also share, when I planned to do my research on women's issues and all, my professor at Jamia Millia told me, Indu, why you want to research on women? And I was doing research on women's issues because my friend's sister was burned to death during my college. And that was something which was gnawing my head. That's why this happens in society. So, and you know what he says further? I said, sir, but I want to. He said, but Indu, you don't understand. You will be competing with women for jobs and women will get the job and not you being a man. I said, sir, I'm not bothered about my job. I'm more bothered about the mission in my life.
Yeah.
So this was one professor in Jamia. In JNU, there's an eminent sociologist. I won't name him here because you can make it out. The Govindji, there was this course in JNU called, Methods of Social Sciences. And I wanted to review Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. I said, sir, I'm going to review Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex and I'll do a seminar and paper and all that and that. You know something? What he told me? Indu, what's so methodological about it? I said, sir, let me do it. He said, we mess up our grades. Sir, I'm prepared to mess up my grades. And by the way, Govindji, you won't believe, I was the only one who got an A in his paper. And that's the reason I topped in JNU. So, and Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex is the book that I've used in all my publications. What a stirring writer she is, So it's like, during our times, Govindji, not just you, but many of us had to fight with the professors to work on women's rights. Can you believe it? In JNU, in 84, I was fighting my professors to work on women's rights. Zakia, 84 ki baat bata raha hu aapko main, not so back,
Distant,
So, women's studies aate bhi hum, as a man, I want to share this. There's another professor, Govindji, there was a course called Social Mobility, Social Differentiation, and Social Change. So I go to this professor. I said, sir, would gender come into your course? He said, no. I said, but sir, why? You're talking social mobility, social differentiation, and social change. Gender is a form of social differentiation. As I said, if you're offering gender, then I'll opt for the course. Otherwise, I'll take science and technology, which Dipankar is offering. He said, okay, if you say so, then we'll have it. So in the entire course in MPhil sociology, Zakia, like I had to convince my professors to include gender so that I could do my course with them, you know. So for many of us also to work on women's rights and women's issues was not easy.
Yeah.
Being a man was not easy. Being a woman, you can imagine the double jeopardy, the triple jeopardy, the quadruple jeopardy that you run also, you know. So things have not been easy.
I fully agree with
Patriarchy
you.
has
I
I
did my PhD on China's political economy, and when I began to talk of coming back, I began to talk of gender studies and women's studies. Then I was, oh, you too are lost to gender studies. What a come down! So,
Yeah.
so I think mind attitudes. But what I look at really change, I mean, whenever about you look at 30 years or 20 years, when we discuss the subject of violence against women or we subject to this, the studies, then it was considered a subject of ridicule, huh? A small kind of things that you are talking about. And but now that when everybody thinks that they have to include gender in their project proposals and their kind of teaching and all this, so that however limited it may be, it will be limited. Sometimes it is just punctuated with gender and they don't mean it, but even then there is some kind of scope. So we should never lose hope. That's what I'm saying, that change is happening, and patriarchy is bound to be smashed, and we will smash it. Hmm? That is our generation, next generation will smash it. We have made the beginning, so that will be the kind of this thing.
Yeah. And I think again, all credit to JNU, because I think I got admission in JNU because I was the only one who was going for women's studies, and everybody else was on means of production, mode of production, and all that. Govindji, सारे लोग वो कर रहे थे. I was the only one who was offering gender studies, and Professor Yugendra Singh and all were there. They said, "Oh, this is a guy who's wanted to do study on women's studies." That's how I got admission in JNU, by the way. You know, I was from Jamia. I was from external from JNU. I think so. But we had to, still, I think, justify a cause, you know. And I would say that I think the journeys have been, of course, with a lot of struggle, but it's been a fruitful journey, you know. We have not lost. I think it's very important that we keep fighting, you know, at all ends, fighting for the subject, fighting for the discipline, fighting for women's rights, fighting for something that we believe. And thank you, Zakia. Thank you for fighting for women's entry into religious places. I think you all have set up a very good model for the country and for women and men, you know, fighting patriarchy. And as Govindji says, we have to smash patriarchy and smash Brahmanical patriarchy, smash all other patriarchies of religions and all that we have. I think it's very important. Simi and all, you want to say something? Otherwise, you close the meeting. Simi and Arjun.
Would Lynn want to speak?
No, I would say that Kelkar ma'am has very aptly summarized it.
Yeah. Okay.
Why don't we? I would really like to thank Zakia ma'am for giving this lecture on such a short notice. But let me congratulate from all of us and also propose a vote of thanks to ma'am for taking
1 second. Arjun. I suppose Lynn has been writing lots of comments and all. If Lynn wants to say something, I think she's welcome to.
Yes, we have brought him in the panel. If you
Lynn.
I just wanted to say
you can also have your video on.
I'm in a community space. I'm just keeping the video off for now.
Yeah, Lynn, please go ahead.
Just wanted to say that it's good to be here listening to all of you, and you know, these meets and these conversations always bring up the personal. So it's not just listening to something and judging it from outside, but a lot of personal experiences, memories just come flooding in almost. So that's why I was writing also and sharing some experiences of, I remember a while ago, as I had said, Kangana Ranaut, for instance, when she was called a witch and she was called mentally ill. And, instead of having a response where she said that, I should not be called this. She said, I accept that, I embrace that word. And, so I feel like for women or for girls, when some woman or some girl is othered and, called a prostitute or a witch in a negative way, instead of, saying that we are not that, including that, and to give respect and say, yes, we are all that also. We are not, just one or the other. We are all that. It changes things. I think it throws certain uh, people who ascribe to a certain patriarchal system off balance. Suddenly they don't know what to do with this woman who says, yes, I'm a witch. Yes, I have mental health conditions and trauma that I'm working through because I have lived in a patriarchal system. They don't know what to do with a woman like that. Like I wrote a personal experience. I had come home. It was the first time I was in India after a long time of being outside, and I had just come. I had gone to a film festival for the first time, and I had come home a little later than my usual, my normal, and I had a relative waiting under my building, saying that only prostitutes are out at this hour.
Oh
And
gosh.
I was shocked by that comment, and not shocked because that relative had called me a prostitute or made a comparison, but my shock was that how did you speak disrespectfully about a woman in prostitution? That was my response. And I was noticing that I'm having this response where I was outraged at the manner in which he addressed a woman in prostitution. And I said that I was a young girl. My just response was, don't you dare talk about women in prostitution in this way. And the
Wow.
shock on my relative's face, I just felt in that moment that I had made my point as a young girl, as somebody who grew up around my grandmother, my mother, other women who didn't know the word feminism or feminist, but they had just lived that life of, working through this patriarchal system without knowing that they are feminist. I felt like suddenly all of those, mothers, grandmothers, and women were just in me saying, "Don't you dare talk like that about a woman in prostitution," And that I think that is where what I wanted to share, that these conversations are they bring up the personal so much. It's so difficult to separate, our
Yes.
real lives from these conversations. And just
Yes.
thank
It
you.
is.
Yeah,
It is.
and
No, no, I
yeah,
think, yeah, and no, that's the reason why we call personal is political,
yes,
So every
absolutely.
personal experience is political. And for us, the politics is what we talk about, and our own personal lives are political. So thank you, Lynn, for that fascinating way of putting things. And,
Thank you.
Thank you for
maybe
attending.
sometime we'll see you speaking also. And thank you,
Yes,
Zakia, for your fantastic conversation that we had
thank
today,
you.
your
And sir, Lynn
discussion.
writes very well. So
Thank
Huh?
you.
Lynn writes very well. So I would suggest keep writing.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah. No, nothing. She's a great writer. She's a dancer. She is MSW from TIS and all. I think
No, not
So
MSW. I did media and cultural studies.
okay, media and culture is from
Yeah,
TIS. So I think thank you, Lynn, for that.
thank
And
you.
so maybe in some of the conversations we can have you also, Lynn,
Yes,
coming
thank you.
sometime.
And I just want to say, as a girl, as a woman, as a practitioner, I'm seeking
Right.
justice for this friend, brother, fellow rights worker called Sushant Singh Rajput. And there are many people who don't like that his surname is Rajput, and they won't ask justice for him. And I know we are in a weird sort of political economy right now, but I'm seeking justice for him and that his rights be honored. And that's a struggle that I'm part of at the moment. And I know that there are many people who are coloring this movement with a lot of colors. They are using, for instance, our work against us, like mental health care work is being used, against a person's mental health care rights. They are using words like caste oppression in a way that we as workers won't use. Like, we won't use those words to deny someone rights, and it outrages me. And so I'm also a person who's seeking justice for Sushant. And I invite, whoever would want to seek justice for Sushant as a rights worker to do that as well, to not have a certain narrative which is, what I call a paid PR exercise running the entire media scape, and to have voices which speak for the alternative also speak for justice for Sushant.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you,
in the
Len.
interest of our event and today's lecture, Zakia ma'am, would you like to have concluding 1-2 minutes? Yes, just to wrap and having the way forward to smash the patriarchy, as our chair Govind ma'am has said. Yes.
Yeah, no, I would just like to thank Embry and yourself and Indu and Dr. Govind and all of you for this opportunity. It has been a very vibrant and meaningful interaction, and I hope our association continues in whatever possible formats. Yeah.
Absolutely. Zakia,
Absolutely.
we'll have you again. And Zakia, thanks a lot. And Zindabad for the work you're doing. It's our
Zindabad.
work, and we are together in that,
Yes.
Zindabad. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.